Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a massive leap back in time to look at the everyday, completely relatable realities of ancient human life. We so often picture our ancestors as these mythical, rugged figures constantly battling mammoths, but right now, we're going to focus on the highly practical side of things. How do they actually get by, day in and day out? I mean, just imagine waking up tomorrow and the world as you know it is just gone. There's no grocery store down the street to grab a quick breakfast, no pharmacy to hit up for an aspirin when you get a headache, and definitely no 9-to-5 job to give your day any structure. Instead, you're dealing with apex predators, the constant threat of sudden illness, and just endless hours to fill without a single modern convenience. Kind of a wild thought, right? How would you handle it? Better yet, how did we handle it? So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover surviving predators, healing without medicine, the first daily chores, managing everyday biology, and finally, ancient vices and leisure. All right, let's dive right into part one, surviving predators. Basically, how to avoid getting eaten. The contrast here is absolutely wild. Think about our cozy lockdown nights today. The biggest threat is what? A mosquito that somehow got past the window screen? Compare that to the sheer, terrifying vulnerability of ancient humans sleeping out in the open wilderness. When the sun went down back then, guys, we were not at the top of the food chain. We were literally a potential midnight snack for saber-toothed cats, massive cave bears, and packs of giant wolves. So, to avoid becoming dinner, our ancestors used three highly coordinated tactics. Since they couldn't just outrun a giant prehistoric cat, they had to outsmart it. First was group vigilance. This was essentially the invention of the night shift, taking turns keeping watch while the rest of the group slept. Then, of course, mastering fire. That was a total game changer. It acted like a glowing, burning shield that kept the wildlife at bay. And finally, coordinated evasion, which just means knowing the landscape so intimately that you could entirely avoid the areas where predators like to hunt. It was all about teamwork, not just sheer muscle. Moving right along to part two, healing without medicine. Let's look at ancient healthcare. Thousands of years before we had sanitized hospitals, modern pharmacies, or antibiotics, how in the world did humanity handle getting sick? Today, a paper cut or a mild fever is, just an annoyance. But in the ancient world, that could literally be a death sentence if things went south. You couldn't just call in sick to work. You had to figure out a way to heal, or you simply didn't survive. What's really incredible is that surviving an illness came down to two things: their botanical ingenuity and an intense commitment to caring for each other. They basically became master botanists through pure trial and error, learning exactly which bark would bring down a fever or which crushed leaves would stop a wound from bleeding. But even more amazing, archaeological evidence shows us healed broken bones. Think about that for a second. In the wild, a broken femur means you can't hunt, you can't run, which should mean certain death. The fact that we find bones that had fully healed proves that these ancient humans spent weeks, if not months, feeding, caring, and protecting their injured. It's pretty beautiful. All right, part three, the first daily chores. What did life look like without a 9-to-5? It's a super fascinating question, honestly. If you don't have an office to report to, emails to answer, or a boss breathing down your neck, how do you actually fill the hours of the day? We have this tendency to picture early humans in this constant panicked state of hunting and running for their lives, but the reality was actually way more structured and surprisingly balanced. Take a look at this daily breakdown. It might actually make you a little jealous. While about 45% of their day was dedicated to foraging and hunting, and another 25% went to chores like making tools and keeping the camp running, a massive 30% of their time was reserved purely for leisure. Yeah. Ancient humans very likely had more daily free time to hang out, tell stories, and create art than most of us working modern corporate jobs do today. Crazy, right? Now, during those chore hours, a big task was making clothes. But the real reason humans started wearing garments actually shifted over time. It started as pure survival against the elements, but evolved into essential gear for global migration. It wasn't about modesty at first. It was literally armor. Thick animal hides protected them from getting scraped up or pierced by thorns during a fast-paced hunt, and as humans started migrating out of warmer climates and into Ice Age territories, well, mastering the needle and thread was basically their passport to colonizing the globe. On to part four, managing everyday biology. How did they handle routine bodily functions? So looking at how ancient women handled their periods shows us an incredible level of practical problem solving. Obviously, there were no drugstores around to buy sanitary pads or tampons. Instead, they just looked to what nature provided. They engineered real solutions using highly absorbent materials from their local environments. Things like soft mosses, certain types of leaves, sea sponges, or softened animal skins. It really highlights how deeply connected they were to their ecosystems, using whatever they had around them to manage everyday biology gracefully. And finally, part 5, ancient vices and leisure. Yep, unwinding in the past. When you track this timeline, it paints a surprisingly relatable picture of humanity. Okay, so about 300,000 years ago, we master fire, which gives us a safe space to gather around at night. Fast forward to about 10,000 years ago, right around when agriculture kicks off, and we find the very first evidence of intentional alcohol consumption. They were actively brewing fermented grains and fruits. And then by 5,000 years ago, we see archaeological evidence of early weed smoking. It just goes to show how deeply rooted this desire to kick back and relax really is in human history. As survival slowly got just a little bit easier and communities settled down, humans found themselves with extra downtime. And with that downtime, they started discovering the intoxicating effects of their local plants. In this early context, a vice wasn't seen as a moral failing or anything like that. It was really just a natural byproduct of curiosity, the rise of farming, and that deep-seated human need to bond with your tribe around a warm fire. Sure, the commercial stuff we use today, highly distilled liquors, mass-produced smoking products, those are vastly different and way more potent than the naturally fermented fruits and raw botanicals our ancestors used. But the core human drive, that hasn't changed one bit. That urge to just relax after a tough day, share a drink, maybe alter our mindset a little, and connect with the people around us, that is a tradition that's literally thousands of years in the making. So from fending off massive nocturnal predators and healing broken bones with nothing but plants, to improvising daily biological needs and literally inventing the happy hour, our ancestors were absolutely brilliant survivalists. But it really does make you wonder, if you were suddenly dropped into their world tonight, which modern comfort would you miss the most? And honestly, do you think you'd even survive without it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the comments. Thanks so much for time traveling with me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.